Hi everyone, my name is Lulu Pumayalli. Wow, that's giant. And I'm from Telluride High School, and I went to San Diego to study marine biology with August Earthtree. So I worked at a lab called the Coastal and Marine Institute Laboratory, and they previously did an experiment on ulva, which is a seaweed, and I got to do this experiment on a much larger scale. I got to study how ulva can help with bioremediation of coastal watersheds, which basically means that it can clean the water and increase the pH so it's less acidic and less harmful for the environment. So this is a seaweed that we grew at the lab, and I had to cut it into really tiny circles so we could moderate the biomass. And I used fertilizer to mimic runoff from the water from San Diego into coastal watersheds. And I set up the experiment where we measured different concentrations of diluted fertilizer. And diluted just means we added water to the fertilizer so it wasn't going to kill the seaweed immediately. And so we did this experiment over 24 hours using different concentrations of the fertilizer and as well as different biomass samples. So this is our awesome fridge that we used. We had a lot of tanks. I had to clean 100 tanks so we could set up 81 tanks. And we labeled each one of these with our different variations of low fertilizer, high fertilizer, and no fertilizer, so we could use that as a control group, as well as a small, medium, and large biomass concentration. And this experiment took 24 hours, so we divided it in 3 time periods. We took out samples after 3, 9, and 24 hours. So since we replicated each of the tanks 3 times, we got to take out the biomass and freeze the water at different times so we could see how much the ulva could absorb in different time periods, if it worked faster or slower. And so we could use this for actual San Diego, to put this into actual coastal watersheds in San Diego. So after the experiment, we had to dry the seaweed, which you can see in the far left, using a giant oven, and then we had to grind it by hand, which took a really long time. It was so long. I started doing this once I got there with previous seaweed from other experiments, and I had to continue it with my own experiment, which was fun because I got to watch TED Talks while I did that, which was nice. And I got to learn about sunfish, or moonfish, that eat sun jelly, which is so ironic, but really cool. And so the data was interpreted at the SDSU campus, which I didn't work at. I worked 20 minutes away from the SDSU campus next to where August worked at, in a room next to his. And so we had to take it, and it was very precise, and I had to use these really tiny microscopic tin foils to put the seaweed in. We had to drop it into this giant machine. So because there were so many samples and the person that worked here quit, I don't have my data yet. But we know that ulva lactuca, the seaweed that I studied, can actually save the world. I am being serious. This ulva is so cool. I am amazed by it. And it is so amazing because we know that it can absorb harmful nutrients from the water because of the previous experiment that they did at the lab, which was much smaller scale. And since I replicated it, I'm expecting the same results. We also know that it is a good habitat for microorganisms. It can also be used as food. The people that I worked with, my mentor, grows this food. She has a seaweed farm, and she sells it to local chefs in San Diego, and they make it into really delicious food. And it can also be dried and used as fertilizer since it absorbs all of these nutrients that are used in regular fertilizer. We can just dry it and put it back into the soil and just reuse it. So I got to do so much more science just behind and after lab, before, after, during. So I got to hang out with August a lot, and we got to explore San Diego. We got to see how crazy driving was there. It was not fun. But I got to drive a boat. I got to go to the aquarium because my internship was not set up the day I got to San Diego. So I had a couple days off, and I got to do more science outside. I got to collect a lot of cool things like starfish, and we had a touch tank, which I spent tons of time at, just hanging out with our awesome sea life. And I got to see a giant sea slug, which put poison on my hand, but because we have a big, thick layer of skin, I didn't, like, nothing ever happened to me, which is nice. I also got to help another person with their experiment on rhodoliths, and rhodoliths is a different kind of algae. It's just harder, and no one really knows about it, so I think what she's doing is so awesome, because, like, there's barely any research on it, and she's doing this in the Santa Catalina Islands, so I got to moderate some of her experiments too. So since I'm a really artsy person, I wanted to do something related to art, and I found these archives at our lab, and this is a pressing that someone did in the 1915 in our lab. And this is seaweed from 1915, and that was collected in San Diego, so I got to go through all this stuff and make some art as well as just collect some data. And then this one with the stripes, that's the ulva, but it's a different kind of ulva. It's not ulva lactuca, it's a different kind because it's like the ulva is the big thing, and then there's like little species. Anyway, so I got to integrate history and art into my internship besides just science. And I got to, oh, adventure is missing an E. Okay, E for excellent. I had an amazing time outside of the lab. I got to hang out with August. He's like the best person you can live with a whole summer with. I can promise you that. And I got to kayak around the sea farm, which is right there, or stand-up paddle, sorry. And that farm is going to be used to put ulva in with our experiment, because since we know it works, we can just put ulva there. And there was a weapon factory over there, so there's a large amount of like weapon chemicals in the water that if you put your hand in, it can be very harmful. So we are hoping to clean that water up with ulva and other seaweed. I got to hang out with Jaden Scott, who's another Pintern that lived in San Diego, and I got to go to a baseball game. Yay. Yeah. So my advice to future Pinterns is to volunteer with Pinhead. I got to do so when I got back, and I got to do so previous years with our cocktail science, which is awesome. Also, take advantage of the resources that are around you. I got to take advantage of the pets that were around me. I don't have pets at home, so this was amazing. This is Mason and Dexter, so that was nice. And I got to go to many aquariums, which we don't have in Telluride. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, especially the Sarah Holbrook and the Pinhead team, my parents who helped me drive there and back and let me go on this adventure, and then my awesome people at the lab, my professors and the master students, and of course my host family, which made this adventure way more cool. And then some pictures. Thank you guys.